On an ordinary Tuesday morning, an email buried in Elon Musk's overflowing inbox carries an attachment that sends a chill through him, a photograph of an elderly golden retriever with distinctive markings around its left eye. The sender, Margaret Thompson, runs a small animal sanctuary in rural Oregon and writes about an older dog with unusual behavior, seeming to understand complex commands and sitting calmly beside people as they work. 15 years ago, during the chaos of a family move, Elon's beloved dog Copper vanished without a trace. Despite exhaustive searches and hundreds of flyers, he was never found. Could this aging dog be their long-lost family member? It was a typical Tuesday morning when the email arrived, nestled among countless others in Elon Musk's crowded inbox. What set this message apart wasn't its subject line or sender, but the attached image flagged by his assistant for his personal attention, a picture of an elderly golden retriever, its left eye framed by a familiar white marking. The dog bore a striking resemblance to Copper, the cherished family pet who had disappeared from the Musk household 15 years earlier. Those were some of Elon's most challenging years, the early days of his entrepreneurial journey, when Copper was more than just a dog. He was a steadfast companion, offering comfort during late work nights and a beloved family member. The email came from Margaret Thompson, an older woman who operated a modest animal sanctuary in rural Oregon. She explained that the dog, named Buddy by the family who brought him to her, had lived with them for over a decade. They had found him wandering their rural property as a stray and took him in, but due to their own age-related health issues, they could no longer care for him. "I know this might seem far-fetched," Margaret wrote, "but this dog displays some peculiar behavior that made me think he might belong to someone special. He seems to understand complex commands, shows interest in the sounds of technology like keyboards and phones, and has this unique habit of sitting quietly beside people while they work, as if keeping them company during long tasks." She had recently seen Elon in a news interview where he briefly mentioned still missing a dog he'd lost years ago. Something about that interview, combined with the dog's distinctive behavior, prompted her to reach out, though she admitted the odds were slim. Elon stared at the photo for a long time. Copper had vanished during a tumultuous period when the family was moving homes. Despite extensive searches, posting flyers across the neighborhood and checking every animal shelter within a 100-mile radius, they never found him. The loss had been devastating, especially for the children, and they eventually had to accept that their beloved pet was gone for good. Yet the dog in Margaret's photo had the same golden hue, the same white patch around the left eye, and the same intelligent expression Elon remembered so vividly. Could it really be possible after 15 years? Elon leaned back in his office chair, the email still open on his computer screen. His mind drifted to the day they realized Copper was missing. It had been a chaotic morning, movers coming and going, boxes stacked in every room, phones ringing incessantly as last-minute moving details were finalized. Amid the disorder, no one noticed the side gate had been left ajar until hours later when the kids called Copper for dinner. The memory of those frantic first hours of searching still tightened Elon's chest. The family had split up, each taking a different direction through the neighborhood, calling Copper's name until their voices grew hoarse. As darkness fell, they returned home, hoping he might have come back on his own, but the dog was nowhere to be found. The days that followed were filled with desperate calls to every vet clinic and animal shelter in the area. Hundreds of flyers were posted on telephone poles and bulletin boards, ads placed in local newspapers, and a substantial reward offered for Copper's safe return. But as weeks turned into months with no sign of their beloved pet, hope slowly faded. For the children, it was their first real experience of loss. Elon's eldest son, just 7 at the time, was especially heartbroken. Copper had slept at the foot of his bed every night since he was a toddler, and the emptiness left by the dog's absence seemed to echo through the entire house. Now, 15 years later, that same son was a 22-year-old university student, building his own life. Elon reached for his phone, his fingers hesitating over the screen. Should he call his son about this potential discovery, or would that be cruel, raising hope that might easily be dashed? After all, what were the chances that this dog, an elderly golden retriever in a small Oregon sanctuary, could be their Copper? Against the advice of his staff, who worried about the emotional toll of a possible false hope, Elon decided to make the 4-hour drive to Margaret's sanctuary. He called his son, trying to keep his own excitement in check as he explained the situation. "I don't want you to get your hopes up," Elon cautioned. "The chances of it being copper are slim, but I thought you'd want to come with me to see for yourself." There was a long pause on the other end before his son replied, his voice carefully measured, "I'll meet you at home in an hour." The drive to Oregon was filled with a mix of nervous anticipation and attempts at rational expectations. They reminisced about Coppa's quirks and habits, how he always carried around his favorite toy, a soft duck, how he tilted his head when someone asked him a question, and how he seemed to understand far more human language than any dog should. "Remember how he'd wait by the door 10 minutes before someone was due home?" Elon's son said, smiling at the memory. "Mom used to say he could tell time." "And how he'd bring you your shoes when you were getting ready to go somewhere," Elon added. "But always the right pair, never sandals if you needed sneakers." As they spoke, the years seemed to melt away, and the pain of losing Copper felt as fresh as it had 15 years ago. When they reached the outskirts of the small Oregon town where Margaret's sanctuary was located, father and son fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts and memories. Margaret's sanctuary was a humble setup, a collection of well-maintained buildings surrounded by fenced areas where rescued animals could roam safely. Margaret herself was a 70-year-old woman who had dedicated her retirement to caring for animals others had given up on. She greeted them at the entrance, her weathered face kind but cautious. She had clearly been running the sanctuary for years, her hands bearing the marks of hard work, her eyes reflecting the wisdom that comes from a lifetime of caring for animals in need. "Thank you for coming all this way," she said, leading them through the sanctuary grounds. "But I also want to prepare you. Even if this is your dog, and that's still a big if, he's quite old. Golden retrievers typically live 12 to 15 years, and if this is your Copper, he'd be at the far end of that range." Elon nodded. "We understand. We're just grateful for the chance to see if it might be him. He's in the back building," Margaret explained as she continued to guide them through the sanctuary. "I should warn you, he's quite elderly, and his hearing isn't what it used to be. But his spirit is still strong." As they approached the building, Elon felt his heart pound with a mix of hope and apprehension. 15 years was a lifetime for a dog, and even if this was Copper, he'd be vastly different from the energetic young animal they'd lost. Would they even recognize each other after so much time? The building was warm, smelling of clean straw and dog food. Several kennels lined the walls, each spacious and comfortable, though only a few were occupied. Margaret led them to the far end of the room, where a door opened onto a small, sunny area designed for senior animals to enjoy fresh air while remaining protected. The dog lay peacefully in the afternoon sunlight streaming through a window. At 15 years old, his golden coat had turned nearly white, and he moved with the careful deliberation of age. But when he heard approaching footsteps, he lifted his head with alert interest. Elon slowly knelt, extending a hand. "Copper," he said softly. The dog's ears perked at the sound of his old name. He struggled to his feet, a process that clearly took effort, and began moving toward Elon with growing excitement. As he got closer, his tail started wagging with an enthusiasm that seemed to energize his entire aging frame. When Copper reached Elon, he didn't jump or bark as he had in his younger days. Instead, he pressed his graying muzzle against Elon's chest and leaned into him with his full weight, as if confirming the reunion was real. The moment of recognition was unmistakable. Both Elon's son and Margaret witnessed the instant connection between man and dog. Copper began making soft, joyful whimpering sounds, and Elon could barely hold back tears as he gently stroked the familiar markings around his pet's eyes. "It's really him," Elon's son said, his own voice thick with emotion. "Look, he's still doing that thing where he puts his paw on your hand when he wants attention." And indeed, despite his age, Copper displayed the same behaviors they remembered, the gentle placement of a paw, the way he positioned himself beside someone as if offering moral support, and the intelligent gaze that always made him seem more like a companion than a pet. Elon's son knelt beside his father, and Copper turned to him, sniffing with curiosity before a spark of recognition lit his eyes. The dog shifted his weight, leaning into the young man, his tail wagging even faster. "Hey, buddy," Elon's son whispered, gently hugging the old dog. "It's been a long time." Margaret watched the reunion with tears in her eyes. "I knew there was something special about him," she said. "He's been one of our gentlest, most intuitive animals. Several of our volunteers mentioned he seems to sense when someone's having a tough day." As they talked, the story of Kappa's 15-year journey began to take shape. The family who had found him years ago were good people who cared for him lovingly but were never able to locate his original owners. When their own health began to decline, they made the difficult decision to bring him to Margaret's sanctuary to ensure he be cared for in his final years. They loved him dearly, Margaret explained. But they wanted to be sure he'd be safe and comfortable as he aged. They had no idea he had a family searching for him all those years. Elon and his son spent the entire day with Copper, sitting in the garden while the old dog moved between them, seemingly unable to decide which long-lost family member needed his attention more. Despite his age, there were moments when glimpses of the young, energetic dog they'd known shone through, like when Elon's son pulled a tennis ball from his pocket. He'd brought it just in case, and Coppa's eyes lit up with recognition and excitement. The dog could no longer chase the ball, but he gently held it in his mouth, carrying it proudly around the garden as he had with his toys years ago. As evening approached, the question arose of what to do next. Copper was clearly overjoyed to see his original family, but he was also an elderly dog who had adjusted to life at the sanctuary. The stress of another major change might not be in his best interest. "What do you think, Margaret?" Elon asked, respecting her expertise with senior animals. "What would be best for him, to stay here or come home with us?" Margaret considered the question carefully. "He's settled in well here," she said. "And at his age, big changes can be tough. He gets specialized care for his arthritis and other age-related issues, and he has a routine that suits him." She paused, watching Copper contentedly nestled between Elon and his son. "But it's also clear he recognizes both of you. The joy in his eyes when he heard his real name, I've never seen anything like it." After much discussion, they made a decision that surprised everyone with its wisdom and compassion. Instead of taking Copper home immediately, Elon arranged for regular visits to the sanctuary, allowing him to gradually reconnect with his family while ensuring he continued to receive the specialized senior care Margaret's facility provided. During his second visit a week later, Elon noted, "He's happy here. And Margaret, you've given him a wonderful life when we couldn't find him. I don't want to disrupt that just to fulfill my own desire to have him back." The plan they devised was both practical and heartfelt. Elon and his family would visit Copper regularly, spending time with him in the familiar setting of the sanctuary. Meanwhile, Margaret would continue overseeing his daily care, now with the added benefit of knowing more about his history and preferences. The arrangement proved beneficial for everyone. Elon became a major financial supporter of the sanctuary, enabling Margaret to expand her care for other senior animals. Copper gained a renewed sense of purpose, becoming an official greeter for visitors while receiving the medical care and daily attention his advanced age required. Most importantly, the weekly visits allowed Elon and his family to rebuild their relationship with their beloved pet while also contributing to the care of many other animals in need. As weeks passed, Copper seemed to grow younger in spirit, if not in body. His eyes sparkled each time Elon or his son arrived, and he developed a habit of waiting by the window on the days they were due to visit. "He knows when you're coming," Margaret told them. "Even before your car pulls into the driveway, he's already at his lookout spot. It's like he's counting the days." During these visits, they often brought items from Coppa's past, an old collar carefully preserved all these years, photos of him as a young dog, and even recordings of family members' voices from when he lived with them. Each item seemed to unlock new memories for the old dog, who sniffed and examined them with thoughtful attention. "I wonder what he's thinking," Elon's son said during one such visit. "Does he remember the house? The yard where he used to play? Does he wonder why we stopped looking for him?" I think dogs live more in the present than we do, Margaret suggested gently. He knows you're here now, and that's what matters most to him. Even so, there were signs that Copper remembered far more than they might have expected. When Elon's younger children, born years after Copper's disappearance, came to visit, the dog studied them with curious interest, as if recognizing something familiar in their features or mannerisms. 6 months after the reunion, Copper was thriving under the renewed attention from his original family. Though he was clearly in his twilight years, he seemed to come alive with the regular visits and the joy of recognition that came with each meeting. On warm days, they took him for short, slow walks around the sanctuary grounds, letting him explore at his own pace while they updated him on family news from the past 15 years, business successes and challenges, how the kids were growing, the moves and changes in all the daily details of life he'd once been part of. I used to talk to him like this when he was young, Elon admitted to Margaret. Some people thought it was strange, having long conversations with a dog, but he always seemed to understand. Margaret smiled. All the best dogs are good listeners, she said, and this one's better than most. For Margaret, the experience brought an unexpected fulfillment. I've been caring for lost animals for 20 years, she told a local newspaper reporter who heard about the remarkable reunion. But this is the first time I've been able to help heal a heartbreak that lasted 15 years. The story resonated far beyond those immediately involved. As word of the reunion and the ongoing arrangement spread, other families reached out to Margaret's sanctuary, some searching for their own lost pets, others wanting to support her work with senior animals. What began as a personal story of reconnection became a reminder of the deep bonds between humans and animals, and the healing that can come from reuniting, even after years apart. Elon's financial support allowed Margaret to expand the sanctuary, adding a new building specifically for senior animals with special needs. Dubbed the Copper Wing, it featured heated floors for arthritic joints, specialized feeding stations for animals with dental issues, and a team of veterinarians focused on geriatric care. For Elon, the experience brought a different kind of satisfaction than his business achievements. Success in technology is about solving problems and creating new possibilities, he reflected during one of his visits with Copper. But this reminded me that sometimes the most meaningful connections are the ones we thought we'd lost forever. As months passed, Copper's health began to decline despite the excellent care he received. His walks grew shorter, his naps longer, and there were days when even the joy of a family visit couldn't fully rouse him. During this time, the visits took on a different quality, more reflective, filled with gentle petting and soft words rather than activity. Elon and his son would sit with Copper for hours, sometimes reading to him aloud, sometimes simply being present as he dozed in the sun. I wonder if we should have taken him home, Elon's son said during one such visit, watching Copper sleep peacefully between them. To give him these last months in the house where he started his life. I've thought about that too, Elon admitted. But I think we made the right choice. He has round-the-clock care here from people who know exactly what he needs, and we still get to be with him. That's what matters most. Margaret, overhearing their conversation, added her perspective. Copper has been happier these last months than I've ever seen him. He has his sanctuary family caring for him every day, and he has you, his first family, who found their way back to him. He's surrounded by more love than most dogs ever know. As Copper entered what they all understood to be his final week of life, the visits became even more frequent. Elon rearranged his demanding schedule to spend more time at the sanctuary, often bringing his laptop to work while sitting beside his aging pet. It was, in a way, a return to the early days of their relationship, when a young Copper would lie at Elon's feet during long nights working on his first startups. On a particularly beautiful autumn day, with golden leaves falling across the sanctuary grounds, Copper seemed especially at peace. He lay in his favorite spot in the garden, his white muzzle resting on Elon's leg, while Elon's son sat nearby, gently stroking the dog's ears. You know, Elon said quietly, I used to wonder over the years what happened to him, where he went after he disappeared. I imagined so many scenarios, some hopeful, some not. His son nodded. I used to dream about it. I'd dream he found another family who loved him, but I could never let myself believe it. It seemed too unlikely. And yet, that's exactly what happened, Elon said, looking down at the sleeping dog. He found people who cared for him when we couldn't find him. He had a good life, different from the one we could have given him, but still good. There was something profoundly comforting in that knowledge, that during all those years of separation, Copper had been loved and cared for, that while they mourned his loss, he had adapted to a new life with people who valued his special qualities. As the afternoon light began to fade, Copper stirred, lifting his head to look first at Elon, then at his son, before settling back into a contented sleep. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of recognition and peace, a moment of connection that bridged the 15-year gap in their shared life. 2 weeks later, Margaret called with the news they had been expecting but dreading. Copper had passed away peacefully in his sleep, curled up in his favorite bed with his soft toy beside him. One of the sanctuary volunteers had been with him, so he wasn't alone, and there were no signs of pain or distress, just a quiet end to a long, well-lived life. Elon and his son drove to the sanctuary immediately, arriving as the sun set over the Oregon hills. Margaret met them at the entrance, her eyes red from crying but her demeanor calm and compassionate. He went very gently, she assured them. The way we'd all hoped to go, surrounded by comfort and care, with no suffering. They sat together in the sanctuary's small office, sharing memories of Copper and the remarkable journey that had brought them all together. Margaret had prepared a box of keepsakes, Copper's family collar, paw prints pressed into clay, a lock of his fur tied with a ribbon, and dozens of photos taken during his time at the sanctuary. "I want you to know," she said, "that having you as his first family brought him such joy in his final months. It was like a circle completed for him." Elon nodded, momentarily speechless. When he found his voice, his words surprised even himself. "Would it be okay if we buried him here? This was his home for so many years, and it feels right that he should rest in the place where he was so well cared for." Margaret's eyes filled with fresh tears. "I was hoping you'd say that," she admitted. "We have a small memorial garden for special animals who've passed on. Copper will be honored there, with a plaque bearing the name you gave him and the name he carried when you were apart." The decision felt right to everyone, a recognition that Copper's life had spanned 2 families, 2 homes, 2 sets of people who loved him differently but with equal devotion. The next day, they held a small ceremony in the memorial garden. Margaret invited the family who had cared for Copper during his middle years, an elderly couple who had known him as Buddy, and they shared their own stories of his intelligence and loyalty. It was a unique gathering of families united by their love for one dog, each having known him during different chapters of his long life. There were tears, of course, but also laughter as they swapped stories and filled in the gaps of Copper's biography. "He'd wait by the door every day at 4 o'clock, the elderly man recalled. "We never knew why until we realized that's when the mailman came. He loved carrying the mail into the house, piece by piece, so careful not to damage it. He did the same with newspapers when he lived with us," Elon's son replied, smiling at the shared memory. "He'd bring it to the kitchen table every morning." As they talked, a fuller picture of Copper's life emerged, not just the beginning they knew and the end they shared. This concludes our narrative journey. I trust you found this gripping saga of intrigue, cutting-edge innovation, and astonishing discoveries captivating. From where are you tuning in today? I'm curious to learn which corner of the globe this tale has touched. If this escapade held your interest, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for a steady stream of compelling, mind-expanding stories just like this one. Fresh material is posted frequently, ensuring you're always in the loop for the newest spellbinding adventures. Be sure to pass this video along to your loved ones and friends. It's a great way to share positivity and insight while expanding our circle of story enthusiasts. Your encouragement is invaluable. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to welcoming you back for the next tale.